All right, today we're jumping into a really heavy topic, chemical castration. We're going to break down this super provocative opinion piece by Vladimir Antonini, who argues against it. And let me tell you, this argument goes to a place you are not expecting.
Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the main debate. Then, we'll dive into why the author says this is a terrible solution, one that could create a monster. After that, well, things take a wild turn. We'll talk about a supposedly bigger hidden crime, and we'll wrap up with a final question that kind of challenges the whole thing. Ready? Let's do this.
Right out of the gate, the author just dives headfirst into this whole chemical castration debate. And yeah, they don't waste any time letting you know exactly what they think.
And get this, a cannon shot in the feet and a bazooka in the rear. That's not just a quote. That is the actual title of the article. I mean, wow. Talk about an opening statement, right? It's basically saying this policy isn't just a bad idea, it's like blowing yourself up.
And the author doesn't stop there. It's not just, I disagree with your policy. Nope. They go straight for the jugular, saying anyone who defends this punishment is showing ignorance and cheap demagoguery. Basically, they're accusing supporters of just trying to stir up emotions instead of thinking logically. So yeah, the tone is set, and it is super confrontational.
Okay, so moving on. How do they actually build this argument? Well, the whole thing really comes down to this one key idea, the difference between how animals and humans work. And this is really the heart of it. The author says, look, with animals, it's pretty much all instinct. It's physiological. You castrate them, the behavior stops. But with humans, it's all up here, in the brain. It's cognitive. So according to the author, all chemical castration does is make the person physically unable to act. It doesn't touch the desire itself. That's still there. You know, the author is also really specific about the words we use. They make a big point of saying we should be using the term pedomania, which means a manic desire for children. They argue that the other term pedophilia is totally wrong because it literally means friend of children, and that's just not what this is. Okay, this is where the argument starts to get really, really dark. The author starts to lay out what they think the consequences of this policy would be, and it's pretty chilling.
So, check out this chain of events the author predicts. Step 1, you have the chemical castration, making the person impotent. But step 2, the desire is still there, just boiling under the surface. This leads to step 3, this intense, forced repression and frustration. And the final step, a violent transformation. The author literally argues you're not solving a problem, you're creating a serial killer monster.
And just to hammer home how serious, and in their view, incurable this is, the author lays out only 3 possible cures: life in an asylum cell, lobotomization, or death. I mean, these are incredibly extreme. It shows you they don't see any room for rehabilitation here. It's all about total containment or elimination, which is why they see chemical castration as such a dangerous mistake. All right, now I need you to brace yourself because this is where the whole piece just takes a massive pivot. The author basically says, you know this debate we're having? It's a total distraction from something way, way worse. So they pose this question: what is the absolute worst crime you can commit against a child? And their answer is probably not what you're thinking. They argue it's not sexual abuse. So what is it then? Well, here's the bombshell. The author claims the worst crime is child kidnapping and trafficking for organ removal. They're saying the whole public focus on sexual predators is just a smokescreen to hide this massive, deadly industry. And to back this up, and it's a huge claim, they point to a specific case, the Pavesi case. They suggest that most missing kids are actually victims of this organ trade. And they even say a new device has made it possible to ship these organs long distance, taking the whole operation global. And just to give you an idea of the money involved here, the author puts a number on it. They claim this device, this transmed machine, costs $250,000 to rent for just one set of organs. That's a staggering amount of money, and it really paints a picture of the scale they're alleging. Okay, so for the final piece of this puzzle, the author zooms out a bit and points to what they see as a huge inconsistency in this whole debate. And they do it with a really simple question. And when the abuse is committed by women? The implication is pretty clear, right? That nobody's even thinking about that side of it. And that brings us to their final point. They claim this whole conversation is totally one-sided, that it's just focused on men. The author blames what they call insane feminists for creating this blind spot, arguing they ignore the possibility that women could be perpetrators too. So at the end of the day, we're left with this really provocative question. Is our focus on one type of crime making us miss a much bigger, hidden evil? The piece really forces you to step back. It's not just about punishment anymore. It's about what we as a society choose to focus on. The key takeaway here isn't whether the author is right or wrong, but how they built this argument, taking us from a debate about castration and completely shifting our focus to a massive, hidden conspiracy. It's a pretty wild ride.